10 years ago, my parents sat me, teen female, and my brother, 19 male, down and told us they were getting a divorce. My brother was angry, and after calling them hypocrites and yelling for a minute, he withdrew. The hypocrite thing came because they could be very forceful when it came to building and keeping relationships, and more than once they forced my brother to have play dates or attend the birthday parties of this kid who was mean to him and others. It used to annoy him, and he was miserable spending time with this kid. Our parents would say he had nobody, and my brother being nice would make him nice back, but it didn't. Our parents would insist you don't just give up on people or relationships, even though my brother and this kid didn't have one outside the pushing. But my brother found their stance hypocritical when they were divorcing. He's still withdrawn from them today. For me, the news made me break down, and I cried and begged them not to get divorced. The stuff I heard about divorce from my friends sounded awful to me, and I'd heard my friends cry over having to choose which parent they did something with, or not having one family, and instead having two, and the never having one house thing. Most of my friends didn't like things being that way. I hated the idea of that happening to us, and I became pretty distraught. In the aftermath, I struggled to adjust to two houses. I got upset when my parents had other partners and missed being all together. When I asked, I was told divorced families don't do that, and I needed to get okay with two separate things for everything. I never settled into the splitting my time between two houses. I still hated it, and a few months ago I ended it by asking my grandparents if I could live with them, and they said yes. My parents didn't like it, but my relationship with both became really strained after they told me they were divorcing. I never felt supported by either, and they built up a lot of resentment toward me. That resentment started coming out once I moved out. My dad has 2 stepkids, and my mom has 3. They both compared me to the stepkids who don't have a problem with 2 households and who don't ask to invite their other parent for stuff. My mom told me none of her husband's kids cried when they were told about their parents' divorce. Dad said his stepkids were happy about the divorce of their parents, that they were tired of an unhappy home. There are times they'll bring up, separate from each other, how I made them feel bad for wanting to be happy and how I made a difficult thing more difficult when I got so hysterical. My mom accused me of making my brother's anger worse by being so upset, which made him fight them for me. She said I was a manipulative child who used tears to get her own way and wasn't really upset but just wanted to force them to stay together. My dad told me I was exhausting and so much hard work when he knew kids who had zero reaction to their parents' divorce. Then my mom asked me if I saw the divorce as a good thing, and I said no. She got so mad at me that my grandparents, who are her parents, made her leave. Then a week ago I got calls from both my mom and my dad within days of each other saying I owed them an apology for putting them through heck when I was 7 and making them feel guilty for divorcing. My brother never got any of this. We talked about it and he was just really angry at our parents for their behaviour toward me and for blaming me when they did nothing to help. Am I the idiot for not apologising to my parents for making them feel guilty for divorcing? Geez, you were a child, not the idiot. They were crappy parents to begin with and have only gotten worse. They forced their child to spend time with his bully? Why? God only knows. They could have gotten you therapy to get used to 2 different houses. They never considered that moving on a weekly basis without any emotional support would be difficult for a child, that having step-siblings take your space in both your parents' lives would be difficult without any reassurance. They are crappy parents, and the only way they can be able to live with themselves is to pretend by putting the blame on someone else. Usually it's the ex that becomes the scapegoat, not a little child. I would go no contact at the stroke of midnight on your 18th birthday. That is because they are abusive idiots. They wanted you to suffer in silence and pretend to be happy to stroke their ego. Your voicing your needs broke their made-up story of being perfect. I'd never speak to them again. Let them live with their perfect stepchildren who aren't allowed to feel their feelings. OP, I'd also tell them that your brother's issues are independent of yours and it's on them to address with him, not you. I'm not a professional therapist and therefore don't know what has been suggested to you, but I sense that your parents are 2 messed up narcissists who frankly don't warrant your time, consideration, or further attention. They bring nothing but negative energy to the lives of you and your brother. They're complete failures as parents, and thank God for your grandparents. Good luck. I, 26 female, just started a new job. I quickly realized that one of my colleagues, Marie, is engaged and is getting married within the next 2 months. It seemed like the whole office was attending the wedding. I absolutely did not expect an invite. She just met me, weddings are planned in advance, venues booked, etc. My friend actually just got married, so I saw firsthand how it all worked. I could tell Marie wondered if I was expecting an invitation and was hesitant to bring up the wedding around me, but I just never made it a big deal. I didn't feel left out in the slightest. Then I got CC'd on an email from someone in the office. Joan was throwing Marie a shower during our lunch hour in the break room in a couple of weeks. Joan was sending out a collection so we could give a group gift, cash, to Marie. They also suggested we make it a potluck. Joan included her Venmo and also asked we email back with what we planned on bringing. Even if I'm not going to the wedding, I still believe everyone deserves to be celebrated and Venmo'd the $20, as well as sent a reply saying I'd bring lasagna. A little later, I saw the $20 had been returned to my Venmo and Joan approached my desk. She said I didn't need to contribute. I said even if I'm not attending the wedding, I'd still like to give Marie a little something. Joan looked a little awkward and hemmed and hawed and then eventually said, "You're not invited to the shower." I was confused. I said, "I can't go in the company break room on lunch hour." She said, "Yes." I asked, "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't drive. I take public transit to and from work. We don't really work near anywhere I could go to quickly for our lunch hour." She said I could stay at my desk. I pointed out this was a little exclusionary. Joan said Marie didn't want me to assume I was invited to the wedding. I said I don't at all. I completely understand I haven't worked here long and we're not close enough. I'm not hurt by that. She said that's great but I still can't come. I asked if I'd done anything to offend Marie and she said no. She just doesn't want me getting my hopes up. I finally let it go and just said fine, have a good party. The day of the shower I sat at my desk during the party while everyone else went, eating my lunch alone. One kind person snuck me a piece of cake. Halfway through the party, the big boss came in. She usually doesn't work on Fridays, so it was a surprise to see her. She saw me sitting at my desk and asked why I wasn't at the party. I told her I hadn't been invited. She was clearly perturbed by this. Later on, she sent an email out banning parties of any kind during work hours. A few people, Joan and Marie included, realise I'm the one who told. They've now turned on me. Some friends say I'm in the wrong here and I should have lied to the big boss and said I was busy with work to finish or something, so as not to ruin it for everyone else. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. They used company resources and excluded someone in the company. That's against HR policy, I'm sure. They didn't not invite you, they deliberately blocked you from going and told you to stay at your desk. They deserve what they got. Time to grey rock them. Sorry, boss asked me a direct question and I assumed you were going to tell her the truth, so I wasn't going to lie and possibly get in trouble. Marie and Joan are mean girls. Period. Document any retaliation ASAP. Also, SS the returned Venmo money. To collaborate, OP did contribute, but money was returned and OP was purposely excluded. Also, always send a clarifying email about these conversations so they don't later turn and say they didn't say it. Do this every time. Be it with your boss, your colleague, or subordinate so they don't change words or say you misunderstood later. Mean Girls is the perfect description of those two. I may have hyperextended my optic nerves with how much I rolled my eyes at getting her hopes up. Girl, your wedding is not that big of a deal to other people. Chill. This is what I was thinking. The multiple variations of "we don't want you to get your hopes up" were just ugh. Newsflash, ladies, nobody's that desperate to go to that wedding. However, it is highly likely to escalate now that they have what they feel is justification to target the OP. The blanket banning of parties at work by the boss will make it easier for them to turn other staff members against OP as well. The whole thing has the potential to get really ugly for them, so I'm 100% on board with all of the advice being given. I've lived with my roommate for over 8 months now. Her low-key helicopter mother told me beforehand that because of her illness, bladder and digestive problems, she let her be a little spoiled and would just clean up after her and asked me to be patient with her lack of cleanliness and to wake her up every day. Now that I think about it, I don't know why I agreed, but I was like, kind of weird thing to ask me, but sure, I guess. But I didn't think it was going to be an issue until I actually saw it. She wouldn't do the dishes, clean up after herself, flush the toilet, or basically any shared housework unless I specifically reminded her, and it gets a little tiring after months of that. She also has a weird habit of throwing food down the sink and it starts smelling real bad if I wait for her to clean it up. She would also have terrible table manners and would leave food directly on the couch and stain it, then leave it as it is, which was pretty darn difficult to get off since the couch was made of fabric. But whenever I point it out, at first she said she'll stop, but the next day I find her doing the same thing. Now, my own parents were aware of all that, and at first they were also angry, but lately They've been telling me that my roommate was just very ill and I should be patient, but honestly, I don't care. I don't think being ill justifies her making a mess around and me having to be patient, waking her up every day, and still cleaning up after her. By the way, for context, we're both uni students, but she barely attends any classes, so I'm not going to lie, after coming back from my classes to a mess and weird odours, it's not the best feeling out there, but I might be overreacting. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. When does that lease end? Find a new roommate. It isn't reasonable for your roommate and her mother to expect you to be a nurse or maid. If roommate can't care for herself, she should probably move back in with her mother, though it sounds like her mother is trying to pawn her off on you. Either way, it's very weird and not your problem. I thought OP was going to say that laundry piled up or Rumi didn't vacuum. But this is super weird and super gross. Let Rumi fail as an adult, but somewhere else. For your parents, start taking photos of how roommate is leaving the place and sending them. They should be fighting your corner, not gaslighting you. Being ill sucks, but it's still ultimately her responsibility to work something out with whoever she's living with, not your responsibility to just do it. I can't tell if she's weaponizing her illness or if she genuinely needs help, but she should be working with you to determine the fairest way to distribute chores. Nobody is too sick to flush the toilet. Her mother didn't just spoil her, she ruined her. If she ever even gets a job, how is she going to cope with co-workers who will not be interested in babying this overgrown child? Your roommate's mum has set her child at a serious disadvantage. It happened when I was having a few drinks with a family friend, Robert. Robert had a commission of his family coat of arms painted onto a mirror. It had been done by a family mutual friend, Kay. She'd apparently made it for him for free but was planning to start a business of it. Robert started talking to me about if I would want a similar work of art done. Eventually, I described one that was made of leopard, Beza and Alice standing by a stream, the giant guns, flower monster and cat behind them, their alter egos reflected in the stream. Next time I was visiting Robert, no drink in me this time, I saw his painted mirror again that he was so proud of. Pretty amateur work, thought no more of it. Then a couple of weeks later, Kay and Robert are knocking on the door. Kay has the mirror painted for me. She told me, that will be £400. I told her, no thanks. She argued that it was done now, she'd taken time and materials to make it. I repeated that I didn't want it. She started going on about how I shouldn't have commissioned it if I didn't want to buy it. I explained that she'd said nothing to me about it before making it. She should have arranged with me, not just gone off a second-hand description from Robert. We could have agreed on a price, far lower than the £400 she was wanting now, maybe even taken a deposit before starting. She tried to argue, but I finished by saying that £400 was overpriced for a painted mirror, and while it's probably better than I can do, I'm not good at art, a standard grade art student could probably do a better job. She got pretty angry about this, as did Robert, but I refused to buy. Because they're family friends, they were complaining to my parents about it. My parents agree that I do not need to buy it, but it does cause a bit of turbulence in their friendships with Kay and Robert. Am I the idiot for refusing to pay for a commission? Not the idiot. You didn't commission anything from Kay. You never spoke to her directly about this. You had a casual chat over drinks with Robert, who then made a massive assumption and asked Kay to make something for you. She failed to contact you and verify that it was indeed what you wanted. It would be different if you asked her to make it and then refused, but you didn't. Robert acted on his own without consulting you. He, and to some extent Kay, are responsible for this situation, not you. If anything, Robert should buy the mirror, or Kay can try to sell. If I'm understanding the description, the artwork was based on literature or film, not something personal to you. If so, someone else may want it. She's an idiot and it's her own stupid fault. She can use this as a good learning experience since she's starting her own business. Robert's meddling is quite suspicious to me too. I bet the price was that high because he had negotiated a commission with Kay. Otherwise, there was no reason to ask her to do it without confirming with OP first. They sound like scammers to me. You are the idiot because you said a standard grade art student could do a better job, and that alone makes you partially an idiot in this scenario. That kind of attitude is just gross, and the fact that if she did ask you, you would have haggled for something far less than $400 is also an idiot move. Haggling is fine. Trying to get custom artwork for pennies on the dollar is something entirely different. In the future, if you don't like someone's art, just say you don't like their style and respectfully decline. Don't say, someone else could do far better, or it isn't worth the price. This happened 6 months ago. I, 27 female, was expecting my first child when my sister-in-law, Beth, 29 female, asked me what names my husband and I were considering. I told her we weren't sharing the names yet. She rolled her eyes and said my husband told her the same thing and she thought that sucked. Beth and my husband are siblings, for clarification. When I didn't offer up any of the names we considered, she started asking me what I thought of certain names. I remember 4 of the names she mentioned. For girls, she brought up Constance and Eleanor, and for boys, she brought up Malcolm and David. I told her I didn't like those names. Some were a little too boring, and others were names that made me think of someone's grandparent, which wasn't the vibe I liked. At the time, I assumed she was trying to offer suggestions because she went from asking what we had to asking my opinion on those names. She mentioned so many of them, and I forgot most since then. 2 months after our talk, Beth announced she was expecting a baby. I thought nothing of our prior conversation, and 2 weeks after Beth's announcement, my son was born. Beth was acting weird around that time, and my husband asked her if she was okay and said nothing was wrong. A few days ago, Beth, who's still pregnant, announced to social media the name of her daughter. We saw her a couple of days later for a family dinner, and Beth said my husband shouldn't have commented on her name post since I'd made myself clear 6 months ago that I hated every name and I trashed all her baby name ideas for the baby. I told her I had no idea those were her baby names. I told her I had no idea she was pregnant 6 months ago, that I believed she was trying to suggest names for our son. She said she hadn't known for sure but suspected she was pregnant and she and her husband were talking about names and I should have realised. My husband asked how I would when she's pushed us to tell her what we were considering for our baby. My other sister-in-law told Beth she needed to get over herself, and if she'd been annoying with me with what looked like baby name suggestions, she didn't have the right to be upset when the names she suggested were actually names she wanted. Beth said when I heard what her daughter's name was, I should have apologised. It was one of the names I forgot. My husband and other sister-in-law said I didn't need to apologise, and their parents told Beth it was rude to bring it up like she did. They said we should talk about it one-on-one instead of over dinner if we had something to resolve. Beth said I should never have been so ugly with my honesty. Am I the idiot? Good God, Beth sounds exhausting. Not the idiot. Also, who cares if other people like or dislike your baby names? Get over it, Beth. There was no way for you to know that she was considering those names for her baby when she just asked you about your baby names. And again, who cares, Beth? Beth takes exhausting to a whole new level. First off, it's impressive that you could even remember the 4 names she mentioned after 6 months, let alone forget them. At Mombrain. Secondly, I think Beth should focus on finding a name for her child instead of digging up old conversations. Nah, she's mad because she found out she can't make the world perceive her choices the way she wants them perceived. You're just a convenient punching bag. Beth needs to always be the center of attention. Don't pay this issue any mind. She's nuts. It's like she was trying to set you up from the start. You had a no-win here. If you would have used one of the names she suggested, she would blame you for stealing the name she picked out for her baby. Beth needs therapy.